What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Dalton Wasserman here for another division preview episode. Yesterday, we were talking about the AFC East. Today, we're talking about the AFC North, one of the most competitive divisions in all of football. So I know the conversation is going to be great. If you watched yesterday's show, yes, of course, Dalton and I did not change shirts going into this day. We're terrified of laundry. All right, I'm just going to get it right out there off the top of the show. We're terrified. We can't do. No, okay, we're recording 2 shows in one day. Sorry. Movie magic. We're revealing it there. But Dalton, how you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, man. Same shirt, same day. We're all good. We get to talk football. We get to talk about another great division. I think arguably the best division in football. Honestly, you mentioned the most competitive. You could argue it's the most talented one, top to bottom. And you got everything. You've got star power. You've got quarterbacks. You've got physicality. You've got future Hall of Famers. You got defensive stars. Everything in this division, it's maybe the hardest division to predict in football because it's the most competitive. And again, I think top to bottom, it's the most talented. You just look at what all 4 of these teams can do in certain situations, especially in their home stadiums. It's insane. It's going to be as fun to watch as any division in football. And honestly, you could make a case for any of them making the postseason.
Yeah, we thought we had such a great show yesterday that like what you have when you get luck, when you win a game with a jersey, you don't wash it. So that's what we're doing with the shirts here. You know, we thought we had to get, we'll just do the entire season because it's just going to be an entire season full of good shows. And we're just going to be wearing the same shirts because, you know, it'd be bad luck if we were to take it off and wash it. No, I agree with you completely, though. This is a fantastic division. We got a lot of really great stuff to talk about. The way that we're going to preview these teams, if you missed yesterday's show and structure is, we'll tell you what we think the final record is going to be, how far we think these teams are going to make it in the playoffs. We'll talk about offensive and defensive MVPs. We'll talk about some breakup players and also some rookies that we think could be big-time contributors in their first year. Before we get to that, got to shout out our friends at Western and Southern. As a busy parent out there, you always want to give your kids a head start with their financial future. But investing can often be both confusing and time-consuming. It kind of can be. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it easy for you guys to set up an investment account for your child that grows with them and helps them prepare for a great financial future. It was designed by parents for parents to make financial planning easy for your family's financial growth. With a UGMA account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. UGMA, it stands for Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. Okay? While your kids can't invest while they are minors, the UGMA account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives you their investments, and it gives you and their investments more time to grow. No contribution limits. You got multiple tax advantages. They are SIPC insured up to $500,000 plus no commissions, just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, a trusted name by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/NFL. That is meetfabric.com/NFL. meetfabric.com/NFL. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Monthly minimum contributions are required. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, Dalton. Like we did yesterday, I think the best way to set the table for the division is for us to briefly talk about who we have finishing first, second, third, and fourth, who we think is going to make the playoffs, a little brief introduction about each team and where we have them, and then we'll get into the weeds and into the details with these teams as we break them down. But how do you see the AFC North finishing this year?
Starting at the top, I think the Joe Burrow revenge tour is on. I have the Cincinnati Bengals winning the division at 12-5. Right behind them in a tight race is the Baltimore Ravens at 11-6. I have them in the playoffs as well as a wild card. In third, I have the Cleveland Browns at 9-8, just missing the playoffs. And I'm crazy enough to pick the Steelers to have their first losing season under Mike Tomlin at 7-10.
I see it Pretty similarly, I have the order exactly the same. I wish it would have been a little bit different. It would have made for better television, but it kind of is what it is. We are both predicting that the Steelers are going to go under 500 for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era. He's seen a lot of things in almost the 2 decades that he has been the Steelers head coach, but I wonder if the Russell Wilson and Justin Fields situation at quarterback might just be too much for even the great Mike Tomlin to overcome. But at the top of this division, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, when I did the playoff predictor and I was going through all the games, I somehow had the Bengals at 14-3. I mean, that's an incredible regular season from them, but I'm with you, man. I think the Joe Burrow revenge tour is on. He's back. He's going to be fully healthy. You still got T. Higgins. You got Jermaine Burton in the fold now. Okay, Joe Mixon's gone, but you got some guys in the backfield that you could trust. I think the offensive line's going to be better. Man, I think that the Bengals could be a really, really good team this season. 14-3 is what I have with them. I got the Ravens and the Browns both tied at 10-7, to be honest with you. Both of these teams, I think, anywhere from 9 to 11 wins they're capable of, but I got the Ravens as the team that ended up getting number 2 as sort of a tiebreaker, but the one that I feel the most comfortable with as the number 2 seed anyways. With the Browns tying them there, I actually had 3 teams from this division making the postseason. So we'll talk about how far we have these teams going. But then, of course, I have the Steelers at 6-11 as well. So I have them at 1 less win than what you did. You set the table for the Joe Burrow revenge tour here with the Bengals. So let's just start talking about Cincinnati here and why we think they could have a massive bounce back season after finishing 4th in the division last year, albeit plenty of reasons why. You've got them at 12-5. I have them at 14-3. Where did you have them going when it came to the playoffs? Did you have them making it to the conference championship, to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl? Where did you have this Bengals team ending up?
This was really, really hard because honestly, I could see them going all the way, but I had them stopped in the divisional round. I believe in my bracket they ended up the 3rd seed and having to go on the road hurt them a little bit. But I have them in the divisional round. I could absolutely see them going further. And look, every team in football is always looking for one of those guys at quarterback, right? There's good quarterbacks, there's average quarterbacks, but you're looking for one of those guys, one of those 5, 6, 7 guys who you know can get you to and win a Super Bowl. And we already know Joe Burrow's one of those guys. He's done it once. His 2 fully healthy seasons, he went to a Super Bowl and was about 40 yards from winning it, and he went to an AFC title game and lost an absolute classic in Kansas City, right? 2021 and 2022, Trevor, he had a 93.1 passing grade across those 2 seasons. That was the best in the NFL by almost 5 points. Ahead of Tom Brady, ahead of Patrick Mahomes, ahead of Josh Allen.
Crazy.
This guy, when he's healthy, he sees the field like the all-time greats, like Peyton Manning and Brady. Like mentally, he's just set apart from the vast majority of the other quarterbacks in the league. I know his mobility is like a BB+, his arm's like a BB+. You wouldn't look at him and go, this is the most talented guy I've ever seen, but he just has it. The football IQ is off the charts, the timing and the accuracy is off the charts, and he just needs to be healthy. They need to protect him. He needs to be healthy. I really think the Burrow revenge tour is on. I think he's going to be right back to being an MVP candidate, and hopefully Orlando Brown has a better year at left tackle, gave up the most pressures in the league in the regular season last year. They have to figure out this right tackle situation. Amarius Mims working through a pec injury right now. Could be Trent Brown to start the season over there, who has flashed at times in his career as being really good, and then other times he struggles in pass protection. Struggled the first time he left New England and went out to the Raiders. Now he's in Cincinnati, again away from New England. We're going to see where that goes. So again, it feels like every year we do this. It's like, hey, Joe Burrow's great if he's protected, if he's healthy. Can they protect him? Can they give him just enough time in the pocket to work downfield? Because we know Chase and Higgins and those guys on the outside are going to make plays, right? But with Burrow healthy, they're one of the teams that's an inner circle AFC contender.
Yeah, look, and I have the Bengals also reaching the divisional round. I have them hosting the divisional round against the New York Jets, and I actually have your New York Jets upsetting them to get to the AFC Conference Championship game. But when it comes to the Bengals getting to the top of this division, you know, I talked about how 14-3 would be an incredible year. I mean, if for any team to go 14-3, I mean, that's a nuts number to win 14 games in a single season. But when you look at the Bengals schedule, it's very manageable. I mean, the tough games that they have, all right, week 2, they go to Kansas City, but you mentioned it. Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, if anybody can be comfortable going into Arrowhead, it's this team. So this team knows what they need to do to win in Arrowhead. And so, the Chiefs are going to be coming off a tough Thursday night opener against the Baltimore Ravens. They then immediately have to host the Cincinnati Bengals. And so that game, it's going to be just a battle of two really good teams. But outside of that, I mean, they play the Ravens twice, but, they're hosting the Ravens next. They get to play the Eagles at home. They got to go on the road to face the Cowboys, but I don't know how great the Cowboys are going to be this year. And outside of that, you're playing the Patriots, the Commanders, the Panthers, the Giants, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Titans, the Broncos. Like, that's the Cincinnati schedule. So it's hard. If you think that Joe Burrow is going to be fully healthy this year, for as much as there might be some sticker shock of seeing 14-3, what's the lowest that you think this team could win games? I mean, it feels like 11 is like the lowest for Cincinnati. And I think maybe a common ground might be 12, 13 games. So I think that they're poised for a really great year. Just schedule alone, I think it really sets them up to win and be the team at the top of this division. The MVP for me, obviously, you talk about Joe Burrow being the MVP of this team and everything that he could be. I kind of think that Amarius Mims is also an MVP of this team. And obviously, does Amarius Mims mean as much as Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase or even like Trey Hendrickson? No. But I'm saying that if I already know what I'm getting from those guys, the most valuable piece to me might very well be how healthy Amarius Mims can be as that right tackle. Because when you look at the Bengals last year, their right tackle, Jonah Williams, 59.1 overall grade last season. You mentioned Orlando Brown's struggles as well. Amarius Mims, when he has been out there, he has looked good already. He has flashed that great athletic pro potential that we saw from him while he was able to play and when he was healthy at Georgia. I think that a sustained healthy year, I know he's banged up already, so it's not a really good start, but if you could at least get Amarius Mims into that starting lineup week 4 or 5 even for the rest of the year, I think that's huge for this Bengals team, and he could be a major reason why the offensive line is going to play better this year and the Bengals could have that type of a ceiling. So I'm going to go with Amarius Mims as my MVP.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the offensive line, it's everything for this team, right? You get year 2 now of Alex Kappa, got Ted Karras on the inside. You're just looking at a team that it had very defined weaknesses last year, but I think you make a great point about the schedule too. They went 9-8 last year. Joe Burrow was hurt. Jake Browning played pretty well in his stead. They get a last place schedule, and this is one of the best. Probably one of the best last place teams we're ever going to see. And now they're getting that last place schedule that you mentioned, and I think that is a big part of it. Whereas you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they get the first place schedule, right? They have to play Kansas City, they have to play Houston, they have to play Buffalo, which is still not an easy game. I don't care. Any game you play Josh Allen is not an easy game, right? So I think there's a lot of games on that Bengals schedule that you just mentioned that they're at least going to be favored in, right? It's always dangerous to do the preseason favorites game, but again, you've got the advantage at quarterback, you've got a good team, and I think another thing, and I know we're going to get to defense here in a second, for me, one of the big stories of the offseason in Cincinnati was revamping this safety unit. They had the lowest graded safety unit in football last year. They let Jesse Bates walk, and he went to Atlanta. Von Bell left, and now he came back. But I think getting Von Bell, getting Geno Stone, who led all safeties in interceptions, and the emergence of Jordan Battle late in the year last year, I think it's going to make a huge difference because just as much as the injuries on offense, the issue for them was coverage over the middle of the field. And I think them going out in this offseason and going, okay, we need safeties. Like, we have enough guys at corner. We have Cam Taylor-Britt. We have DJ Turner. We have some other guys we're going to get into. But this was a disaster over the middle of the field. And you could see it even stressing their two great linebackers, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. If they get Burrow healthy and they get better coverage over the middle of the field, especially from their safeties, this is a really, really dangerous team.
Well, who you got as your defensive MVP for this team?
Getting away from the secondary, I have to go to my Florida Atlantic legend down there at defensive end. And that's Trey Hendrickson. Man, he's just been an elite player since he's arrived in Cincinnati. He was an up-and-comer during his first 4 years with the Saints. He was a rotational guy, but he was really good when he got in there. He's one of the best pass rushers in football, one of the best blindside pass rushers in football. 2-point stance, 3-point stance, doesn't matter, gets pressure, gets sacks. Had a sack when they were in the Super Bowl against the Rams. 91.5 pass rush grade since arriving in Cincinnati in 2021, a 3-year stretch, 6th best among all edge defenders. And the 5 guys ahead of him are pretty much future Hall of Famers when you talk about Myles Garrett and TJ Watt and Micah Parsons and those guys. As a pass rusher, he's as good as anybody, and he's the reason their front 7 goes, especially in the passing game. He's a problem. Do not block Trey Hendrickson one-on-one. It's never worked. It didn't work at FAU. It didn't work in New Orleans, and it certainly doesn't work in Cincinnati. That's public enemy number 1 when you're talking about trying to pass protect against the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He has to be their defensive MVP, because when you look at the rest of the production along the defensive line in Cincinnati, Hendrickson had an elite 90.7 pass rush grade in 2023. The next closest defensive lineman was DJ Reader, who is gone. And after that, it was BJ Hill, who had a 65.8 pass rush grade. So it's like you had an elite performance from Trey Hendrickson, and then it was nobody really getting after the passer. And for as good as I think that Lou Anarumo defense is sort of as a whole, you need guys to be able to step up and be superstars for you. And outside of Trey Hendrickson, they don't really have that superstar along the defensive line. So it is all on him. I can understand why this summer he was like, hey, pay me more, because he probably looked at the defensive line around him and said, I am the engine that makes this car go. And he absolutely is. They need him again. If they're going to win anywhere close to 13, 14 games this season, he is once again going to have to be one of the better defensive linemen in football up front for this team. So I have him as the defensive MVP. Breakout player. Who you guys' breakout player for him?
I'm going back to the secondary for this one. And you know, they covered the safety position in the offseason, and they've got some internal guys at corner that they're going to try to live with out there. And I know Lou Anarumo used a lot of zone coverage, a lot of different looks, but Dax Hill is a guy who this year, now moving to corner in the preseason, and a guy coming out of Michigan who we really thought were like, we don't know what position he is. He's one of those guys that you draft as a defensive back and you kind of figure it out later. Well, it looks like now he's settling in pretty good at corner, right? He's had a pretty good preseason. They have a lot of young corners out there. They're trying to figure out which ones are going to start for them, which ones are going to succeed for them, right? And they lost Chidobe Awuzie now. Mm-hmm. They've got to figure this out at corner. They've got safety figured out. They went and got 2 veterans back. Jordan Battle's really good. Now they just need young corners to step up. Dax Hill could be one of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I hate to mirror most of the picks that you have here, but Dax Hill is my breakout guy. And that's because when you look at what Dax Hill is doing this year in this defense, it is completely different, and he looks like he is playing better. I remember when I was scouting him coming out of Michigan, I really liked Dax Hill because of his overall athleticism and how versatile that he was for that Wolverines defense. Now, we talk about this with scouting all the time over at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. There's a difference between being versatile and being homeless, right? I mean, if you are versatile, that means that you can play a variety of different positions. But if you are homeless, if you are if you are a jack of all trades, master of none, if you will, sometimes you can get lost in the NFL. If you don't have a home base position to get back to, sometimes that versatility actually can be a negative for you breaking into the NFL because you don't have a home. You don't have a home position to go back to. For Dax Hill, I think they were trying to make it safety. They were trying to make it maybe as a slot defender, but you can see it on the screen right now. Earned a 50.8 overall grade last year. He has a 90.1 overall grade this preseason. And why, Dalton? It's because he's playing a completely different position. They've got Hill now playing as a wide corner and not a slot player, not a safety. He has played more snaps at wide corner, 35, this preseason than he did all of last year. He only played 30 snaps as a wide corner. So he's totally switching positions, and that he is doing so to a ton of success. He has earned one of those starting outside cornerback spots. I think that Hill, I loved his athleticism. I loved his potential, but I just wasn't sure where he was going to end up at the next level. I felt like slot defender was going to be a good role, but hey, he's really thriving in that wide corner coverage role now, as we have seen throughout the preseason. So I'm excited to see him. I also think that he is a breakout player. And just looking ahead, I can see that we also agree on the best rookie for this team. I already went with Amarius Mims, who I think could be the MVP of this team, but now we have the same guy as a kind of breakout rookie here. So tell the people who we got as the Cincinnati Bengals breakout rookie.
Yeah, and I really wanted to put Amarius Mims in this spot. The injury scared me off a little bit, and I just need to see him get over that and get in the starting lineup and play well. But with a guy like Dax Hill, I think people forget with player evaluation, there's talent and there's fit, right? And maybe they just found the better fit for him. But I'll give you the rookie with talent and fit on this team, and that's wide receiver Jermaine Burton. Man, this guy, talk about a big play machine in Alabama. Obviously, with Jalen Milroe down there at Bama throwing the ball deep to him. That was a big help. But Burton could get down the field. He can absolutely fly. And I think in an offense, as long as they're protecting well enough that wants to get vertical, you talk about Jamar Chase is your do-it-all guy on the outside. He can do anything, but he's getting double covered all the time. We know what T. Higgins can do, but he's more the size guy than the speed guy, right? He's going to win back shoulder in those 50-50s. Jermaine Burton can absolutely fly. He's a movable piece. He's a guy who can win downfield, take safeties off the top, and even with his speed, help your running game just getting more into too high looks. I think, to me, if I have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Jermaine Burton across from me on defense, I'm not playing single high. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, this is too much speed, too much talent on the outside. Burton could be in for a big rookie year. Look for him to win vertically down the field, honestly. And with Chase and everything he can do after the catch, Burton's a guy who's a big play threat. I think very much a change up from what they had in the slot before with Tyler Boyd kind of moving the chains. This offense is going to get vertical this year.
Burton's such a stud to be a wide receiver 3 on this team. 86th percentile separation percentage last year overall while he was at Alabama. 79th percentile in separation versus single coverage, which is just an incredible number to have. The dude knows how to run routes. He knows how to get open, and we're already seeing signs of that in the preseason as well. So I also have Jermaine Burton. Also want to shout out Matt Lee, their center. Late round center pick, 87.7 pass block grade this preseason on 71 pass blocking reps. I don't think he's going to earn the starting center job like right out of camp or anything, but man, he's doing a great job. So shout out to Matt Lee and the backup interior offensive line there in Cincinnati. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens next. I have them finishing 10-7. You have them finishing 11-6. This was the team that won the division last year with Lamar Jackson being MVP. How far do you have the Baltimore Ravens going this year, knowing that they are a wild card team from this division? Where do you got them going? And then let's talk about your offensive MVP here.
I have them taking a slight step back in making the wild card round, but not going no further than that. I just think I have some concerns with this team, especially at wide receiver. Odell Beckham was their number 2 last year, and he's gone now. Now, I need Mark Andrews healthy for sure. That's coming off the leg injury that he had last year against the Bengals and didn't return. Isaiah Likely did a great job, as his replacement. I've liked Isaiah Likely since he was at Coastal Carolina. I think you do too. Guy who can really separate a lot of speed at tight end, but I need someone other than Zay Flowers to step up at receiver. Is it finally Rashad Bateman? Is it somebody else? Like, who is it? I know Zay Flowers can get open. I don't think there's any question about that. I think he's a perfect fit for them. Todd Monken knows how to use him perfectly. It's the rest of it. It's this passing game. I know they got Derrick Henry in there. I already know they're going to be the best running team in football. They've done that since Lamar Jackson stepped on the field, right? So it's not that, look, and Derrick Henry's going to put up numbers and fantasy people are going to love him. But to me, I don't know how much it really improves their team to get Derrick Henry when they were already by far the best running team in the AFC and probably in the NFL. So I think a wild card exit for me, there's just something about it where I go, I just don't know that they got. Then you look at their defense. They lost Patrick Queen. They lost Geno Stone. And I know they're always drafting well. They're one of the best drafting teams in the league. But there's just something about this Raven team makes me feel like they missed an opportunity last year.
Yeah, I also have them taking a little bit of a step back. Obviously not winning this division. I also have them getting to the wild card round. I think this is a good football team, but when I was doing my playoff predictions, the way that it popped out is I have them, spoiler alert, facing the Houston Texans at home in the playoffs in that first round of the playoffs. And I had Houston as the team that was victorious there. So I had, similarly to you, the Ravens just reaching the wild card round, making the playoffs. I think an interesting part of this and part of a reason why I kind of have them taking a little step back, I agree with you. I think there is still a lack of passing weapons beyond Mark Andrews and now Zay Flowers. I think that they kind of need a little bit more to that. But really beyond the passing attack, which I know a lot of people like to talk about because it's a hot button talk with Lamar Jackson, this team's bread and butter has always been running the football, especially when things are going really well. They bring in Derrick Henry, who is objectively a very good free agent to bring in. Pairing him with Lamar Jackson is incredible, but I do have a little bit of worries with losing Morgan Moses on this team because last season Ravens were 5th in the NFL in rushing grade. They had a 90.5 rushing grade as a team, and they were 4th in EPA per rush, so really effective, really good at running the football. Morgan Moses last year as their right tackle had a 77.5 run blocking grade. Roger Rosengarten, who I know a lot of people are excited about as their rookie right tackle now, he is a lighter offensive tackle. Like running the ball and being a bully, like that has never been his game. He's been much more of a finesse pass blocker during his time when he was at Washington. Rosengarten had just a 52.9 run blocking grade, and that's last year in college at Washington. So, run plays and run schemes are a little bit different. It's going to be different. With Baltimore's run scheme, I think it's going to be more smash mouth stuff, a lot more power, a lot more north to south runs than Washington, which I think was more, I don't have these numbers off the top of my head, but I feel like it was more zone blocking stuff. It was more getting into space, more towards the sideline, right? So the blocking scheme is going to be a little bit different, but I am worried about that. Now, thankfully for Baltimore, it's not like it's all bad. I mean, they got some beef up front. I mean, you still have Ronnie Stanley if he is healthy. Andrew Voorhees is one of the strongest interior offensive linemen of the class that I watch. Daniel Falele looks like he's 350 pounds. I mean, he's just a monster on that interior right guard. And then you have Tyler Linderbaum as well, who I think is one of the best young centers in the league. So they've got enough guys outside of Rosengarten, but he and just his run blocking ability, his run blocking grades, not as impactful as it was for a guy like Morgan Moses for a team that really wants to predicate itself on running the football. So I think that's just something to think about. I think the offensive MVP is Derrick Henry, because as good as the Ravens are running the ball, that is going to determine not only their floor, but I also think their ceiling as well. Defensive MVP, who you got for this team?
So I think I forgot to mention, but offensive MVP for me has to be Lamar Jackson. It's always Lamar Jackson. He's the MVP of the league. He's the MVP of their team. Defensive, I'm going with at safety with Kyle Hamilton. This is one of the freaks at safety, man. And I know, look, we've got some up-and-comers coming up in college. We got some guys who are already in the league who are freaks. I think safety's making a comeback, and Kyle Hamilton's right at the center of it. He just can do everything. I mean, there's nothing he can't do. 86.4 overall, 6th best in the NFL. Pass rush, send him as a blitzer, play in the slot, cover one-on-one. I know he gave up a touchdown in the playoffs to Travis Kelce one-on-one, but he was in wicked tight coverage on that play. He can run, defend, he can fly around, he can play as that extra linebacker type if you're in the nickel and you need a tweener like that. Kyle Hamilton, since his days at Notre Dame, has been able to do everything, and he does everything for this Ravens team. It's probably the reason that they felt comfortable letting Geno Stone walk and signing Justin Madubuike up front instead. Kyle Hamilton really on the back end is a leader of this defense. He's the glue that holds this whole thing together. He's about to have a freak season. I think it's a lot like when we talk about other guys like Derwin James and Jesse Bates and those guys. He's in that class, and I think honestly he's their best defensive player.
I mean, Kyle Hamilton is fantastic. I mean, he's no Antoine Winfield Jr., but it's just, no, I'm kidding. These guys are both fantastic players, some of the best safeties. On yesterday's podcast, we were talking about Javon Holland as well. It's just, I agree with you, man. We've got so many great safeties in the league this year. It feels like we've got a lot of good ones that are coming into the upcoming 2025 NFL draft as well. A little teaser there. But my defensive MVP, somebody's got to step up at pass rushing, right? I mean, you're losing Jadeveon Clowney. You're losing other guys along the defensive line. Like, somebody's got to really step up on the edge and be that edge presence for you. I know they got Kyle Van Noy as well, but I think it's got to be time for David Ojabo to step up, right? Like, I think that he has to now, hopefully fully healthy, and that's, I think, been the thing with David Ojabo is he tore his Achilles while he was working out at, I think it was it at the Combine or was it his pro day?
I think it was I'm pretty sure it was, I thought it was at his pro day.
So he tears his Achilles working out for the draft. So he misses all but 2 games his rookie season. And then last year he tears his ACL in September. So he misses basically all of last year as well. So those are 2 major injuries on a guy where explosiveness, lower body power, that's a big deal. So sucks, man. But if he can come back, I really liked what I saw from him at Michigan when he was really starting to figure it out. I think he's just a great athlete, ton of size, a lot of strength, dense body. He can play a lot of different stuff. He could be a 2-point rusher, 3-point rusher. I think the sky is the limit for David Ojabo. We just really have not been able to see it. If he can really step up and be fully healthy, and if he can be a big-time impactful pass rusher on this team, you got Roquan in the middle. You got Marlon Humphrey. You got Kyle Hamilton. You've got Justin Madubuike. Like, you got guys at basically every other level of the defense that if you just get a steady, explosive edge presence, they could really get after the passer. That is something that I think could be a massive swing and even maybe a couple of wins for this team if they're able to count on him for that. But yeah, I got David Ojabo. I'm really hoping we get a fully healthy year from him because he was somebody I was really excited about coming out of Michigan. Who's your breakout player? Who do you got?
I'm staying with the same position and even staying with the same college conference, but this guy came out of Penn State a couple of years ago. I think he's going to be really good this year in a starting role. That's Odafe Owe. Okay, you've got Jadeveon Clowney, who left in free agency. Everything you just mentioned about needing a healthy edge presence, somebody off the edge, but Owe's a guy who at least we've seen already do it last season, a 77.4 pass rush grade. That's the highest among returning Ravens edge players, right? And he didn't have a ton of sacks, but I think this is one of those guys where the pass rush grade, the pass rush win rate, and the pressure start turning into sacks for him as he gets more snaps, right? Like we've established last year, Clowney and Van Noy were the starters. Owe rotated in. Now it's his time, I think. I think Ojabo steps more into Owe's role from last year where he rotates in, he gets in, he's not going to play 50-something snaps a game, right? I think Owe has to be that guy off the edge for them. Exactly everything you just described for Ojabo, I think that's where Owe steps in as the counterpart to Van Noy with Clowney leaving into that starting role as their best pass rusher, an emerging player. He needs to step up for them in their front seven, and their pass rush could struggle off the edge.
Okay, my breakout player, I'll switch over to the offensive side of things. You touched on some questions at receiver, right? We can depend on Zay Flowers. You said he's going to be great. But then outside of that, Nelson Aguilar is still here. Rashad Bateman, it feels like we're supposed to buy into the hype. And trust me, I bought into the hype of Rashad Bateman the last 2 years, but I'm still waiting for it over here. Can we get Tylan Wallace a little bit of love? The fourth-year man out of Oklahoma State? Because I really liked Tylan Wallace when he was at Oklahoma State. Yeah, okay, he's a little bit smaller. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but man, he was productive for the Cowboys. Almost 1,500 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns during his sophomore season while he was at Oklahoma State. Kind of went through some injuries and didn't have as good of a year after that. Ended up getting drafted in the 4th round by the Ravens. But Dalton, I was shocked by this. He has yet to play more than 100 snaps in any regular season over the last 3 years. This year, this preseason, he's got an 89.2 overall grade. That's one of the highest. I think it might be the highest on the team. Give Tylan Wallace a shot. I feel like we just keep throwing, Nelson Aguilar and Rashad Bateman and these guys out there, and I just feel like their ceiling is capped at this point. It would be futile to just watch these guys out there and say, yeah, it's coming, just wait on it, the big-time breakout year. Tylan Wallace feels like he might be ready to break out, and I know he's sort of a similar build to Zay Flowers. Maybe they want somebody bigger out there. They want a bigger receiver, somebody that can handle those extra responsibilities, but you got some tight ends that could do that, right? You flex Mark Andrews out to be able to do that. Maybe even Isaiah Likely. You've got some size at tight end. Tylan Wallace has been productive for you, and this preseason feels like his most productive preseason yet. I'd love to see him get some more roles in the offense when the regular season comes around. Now, I understand it's a team that likes to run the ball a lot. Tylan Wallace, at his size and stature, isn't exactly going to be a great run-blocking wide receiver for you. But when you got to pass the football, let's get this guy a little bit more involved. I'd love to see a Tylan Wallace breakout season, especially for as well as he is playing in the preseason. What about their best rookie? Either side of the ball, offense or defense, who do you got as the Baltimore Ravens' best rookie this year?
Don't forget, too, with Wallace, that game-winning punt return against the Rams last year. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands, but
the guy, the football. Come on.
Oh yeah,
come on.
Absolutely. Just get anyway.
We're starting the agenda. We're starting the hype train right here on this show.
Tylan Wallace is our first hype train together. Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah. I don't know how well that's going to pan out for us, but I've loved Tylan Wallace since that 2018 season, so I'm okay taking a chance on him here and saying, let's get this guy the football.
We'll figure it out as we go, and I'll tell you another guy who's figuring it out as he goes, man. Their first-round pick, Nate Wiggins, at corner, he looks spectacular this preseason, didn't he? I mean, just first of all, perfect fit in their defense. You got a guy with size, speed, length. He's one of those guys. I mean, he's a little bit light. I think he weighed in at the combine at like 173 pounds, and the way he looked this preseason, I don't even care. He had a 91.1 coverage grade this preseason. Hurt his shoulder making a tackle in the first game, missed the second game, and then came back against Green Bay in the third game and just didn't miss a beat. This guy, when you talk about the Ravens, they have a long tradition of wanting to play like aggressive press man coverage. Nate Wiggins is built for it. And his speed, I think his speed especially, he can cover any receiver in football with his feet right now. I think physicality is going to be a thing. If he were to see a receiver, almost like with Emmanuel Forbes last year, another kind of skinny corner who struggled with thicker receivers like A.J. Brown and guys like that, we could see that be a problem. But what Nate Wiggins has showed us so far in the preseason and by all reports in camp, this guy could be a real force for them across from Marlon Humphrey. We've known Marlon Humphrey's been great for years, but it seems like the last couple of years of trying to find that number 2 corner or even 1A and 1B across from Humphrey, Nate Wiggins could be it. He was spectacular at Clemson, enough that nobody in the ACC even wanted to throw to him, and I don't blame them one bit. And he's only put good tape on the field. He was terrific. 3 forced incompletions a few weeks ago. I believe it was against, I want to say it was against Philadelphia. I don't remember. But he's just been so good in coverage, and he's just a pure lockdown cover corner. Run support's going to need some work. Got to put some weight on in the next couple of years. But I have no question about this guy's coverage ability.
Did you see him having 2 mouthpieces on his helmet? Did you see this?
I did not. Why? Does he keep a spare on him or what?
Look, the thing is, I don't know. I'm trying to find out what the answer is, and I don't know what it is. But everybody, I wasn't even watching the game. I just saw the tweets. People were like, why is Nate Wiggins wearing 2 mouth guards? And I don't think like either of them, like he had either of them in. Like they were just like dangling from the helmet. Somebody said that they were also the opposing team's colors. I don't know. I have no idea. I need a beat reporter for Baltimore because he's a corner and he likes to talk, a lot. And I'm trying to keep the show family friendly before we go off the rails before the season even begins. But he likes to talk a lot, and so I'm wondering, like, there's got to be a reason for it. It's got to be some sort of, pride reason. But I agree with you completely. Nate Wiggins is my guy for best rookie as well. You mentioned the 91.9 coverage grade. No returning corner for the Baltimore Ravens this year had a coverage grade above 70.0, and this guy's got an elite coverage grade in the preseason. He is exactly what the doctor ordered for Baltimore's secondary to get even better this upcoming season, and we are already seeing him play extremely confident. We are going to get to the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers next, tell you where we have the Cleveland Browns finishing when it comes to the playoffs, and then why we don't have the Pittsburgh Steelers reaching what is always their floor, and the 500 record that they have had during their entire time with Tomlin as their head coach. We'll get to that in a second, but first we got to shout out our friends over at DraftKings. We had the appetizer last week. Now it is time to absolutely feast. College football is back. Don't miss out on any of the action. Jump in at DraftKings Sportsbook. Full slate of games for week 1, including big matchup in Atlanta. Preseason number 1 going up against number 16. It's beautiful. Number 1 place to bet touchdowns is DraftKings. Currently has the most touchdown markets offered and leads in TD futures and season specials as well. Touchdowns can be scored on the ground, through the air, defensive effort. Any of those methods, you guys know, can result in a winning bet as well. This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. Enjoy the ride now all the way through the expanded playoffs, which I know Dalton is excited to hear because I am as well. Plus, all the newbies out there getting into college football spirit. Here's something a little extra for you. New DraftKings customers, if you bet just $5, you get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code PFF. That is promo code PFF for new customers, getting $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, it is 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling at 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBAL. This show is also sponsored by our friends at BetterHelp. In today's hectic world, it is easy to focus on everything except for yourself and your own mental health. Sometimes you need a little bit of help to make sure that you stay on track. Therapy can be a great, useful way to have a better understanding of how your mind actually works and become more aware of your own patterns of behavior and how to improve them. It's useful for everybody and not just people struggling with specific problems. I've been going to therapy for over 1.5 years, and it initially started as something that I needed help kind of getting through and dealing with, but now it has become something that is very regular for me, that I go once every 2 weeks, and sometimes I'll go in and think like, yeah, like everything's good. We're all good to go, and we'll end up digging into a conversation, and I learned so much about myself and how I handle things, and it's just allowed me to be so much more confident in who I am and the relationships that I have around me. It's a wonderful tool, and I would absolutely advocate for it. If you are thinking about trying it, you absolutely should. Give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is convenient. It's flexible. Entirely online way to get therapy that is right for you. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day like you never want to skip leg day with our friends over at BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/PFF today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/PFF. Dalton, we are on to the Cleveland Browns now. I had them going 10-7. And did I have them making the playoffs or missing the playoffs? I think it says here I had them missing the playoffs, but I believe they're actually making the playoffs in my playoff predictor. So I think I might need to amend our sheet that we have here. But you have them going 9-8 and missing the playoffs, definitively, I hope. What do you think about the Cleveland Browns, where they currently are, offensive MVP? Talk to me about the Browns.
So there's a lot going on here because the Browns are they were kind of this Jekyll and Hyde team last year, right? There's some things they're absolutely great at. We know Myles Garrett in the pass rush, right? We know they can run the ball behind a good offensive line, but you had the Nick Chubb injury last year. And I think a couple of things for me. One, I always question teams that have quarterback issues, and I kind of believe there is a quarterback issue here. When you have a guy who, since he joined Cleveland and Deshaun Watson, has a 61.5 overall grade, honestly, that's backup level stuff. It's just not going to be – you're not going to make the postseason with a guy grading a 61 at quarterback, okay? And two, they've got some issues at offensive tackle right now. Jedrick Wills is hurt, and they're not sure he's going to be ready for opening day. Jack Conklin's been taking reps at left tackle now, a position he's not used to. DeJuan Jones, the rookie from last year, played well for them, but then he blew his ACL out, I believe it was, as well, and he's recovering from injury. I have issues at quarterback. I have issues at running back with Nick Chubb's injury. I have issues at offensive tackle. And one of the weird things for me, Trevor, is they always talk about defense travels, right? And the Browns have a great defense, and defense is supposed to win you road games, right? But there's just massive splits in this team's performance, when they were playing in Cleveland versus when they were playing elsewhere. And their defense in Cleveland at home was the best defense in football, basically bar none. Honestly, it was just monstrous to go into that crowd, into the dog pound. Myles Garrett, a good secondary. They brought Juan Thornhill in there from the Chiefs, and Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker, and Zadarius Smith off the edge. All these guys, but they go on the road and they played like a bottom 8 defense, and I believe gave up over 30 points a game. So I'm a little confused. I'm like, why is it that defense usually travels, and for them it doesn't travel on the road with them? So to me, there's some major issues with the core of the offense. I'm not even sure. I know they traded for Jerry Jeudy. I'm not sure they have enough receiving threats out there to help Watson, and they need to take this show on the road and play better away from Cleveland.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think that they need to be a better team when it comes to playing on the road. Dalton, it's just really hard for me to look at this team and say, with missing Nick Chubb for most of the year, with Deshaun Watson playing as poorly as he did, and then also missing time due to injury, they still finished with 11 wins. Stefanski still had this team as a double-digit 11-win team last year to make the playoffs. And so even though I still don't think things are perfect in Cleveland, it's really hard for me to have them anywhere less than 9 games for sure. I know you got them at 9 games, but I had them, winning an extra one there, being at 10-7, sneaking in and getting a wild card bid. So I think that they're going to be right there, even with the question marks at quarterback. I think the offensive MVP for this team has to be Deshaun Watson. It cannot be anybody else. If the team is going to get to where they want to go, it's going to be through Deshaun Watson. He has recorded 1 game where his passing grade was above a 75.0 since 2020. Now, 2 of his best games since 2020. Now, remember, he held out all of 2021, so you missed all that 2021 season. But 2 of his highest graded games did come last season. He had 2 passing grades in the 70s, but every other grade that he has played with the Cleveland Browns has been in the 60s or worse. He just straight up has not been good. And we've had this conversation for 2 straight years now, but it has to remain the same because on paper, Cleveland's roster remains one of the best in the league. Now, you mentioned they're going through some struggles along the offensive line. They've got to get healthy along the offensive line. That has to be better because that has been a big reason why this team has been as good as they've been over the last 3 or 4 years is they are dominant in both trenches with some studs on both sides of the ball in that area. They still have to get healthy and be good there, but if everything is as it is supposed to be, the MVP on this team is Deshaun Watson. So I think that it's all got to run through him. Did you mention your MVP? Who's your MVP for?
Actually, mine is the guy who I think who was their best player last year, and it kind of correlates with Watson. But I got Amari Cooper at receiver. He's just one of the most underappreciated receivers in the entire league, right? I know he was in Dallas, he's in Vegas, he's in Cleveland, he's switching teams. It's kind of the same way I feel about Brandon Cooks, where I go, don't forget how good this guy is just because of how many teams he's been on, right? He's good for 1,000 or 1,100 yards every single year. And let's be real, with a lot of questions at wide receiver, he's the focal point in their passing game. So if Watson is going to make that recovery into being a star player and all of that, he's going to be targeting Amari Cooper a lot in this offense, because I still think even with the Jerry Jeudy trade, they've got questions beyond Cooper.
What about defensive MVP? You know, and I think this is insulting, because I think that we have no choice but to name the same player here. But you mentioned how good and how deep this defense is everywhere. So talk about the guy who I think you are going to mention as the MVP, who I am also going to mention as MVP. Maybe you'll pleasantly surprise me. But then let's just have an overall talk about their defense.
I thought about not naming him for maybe 3.5 seconds. So it's Myles Garrett.
That might be a world record.
It might
as well
be.
as he played
There's
last
probably
year.
some people, you probably did it in half that time, right? Yeah, it's Myles Garrett. I mean, he's going to the Hall of Fame one day. He's Defensive Player of the Year, best pass rusher in the league. And actually, what I went back and digging through PFF history, the best pass rush grade of any edge rusher in PFF history at 95.1. The only player with a better one is Aaron Donald. I mean, Myles Garrett is just in that category. Over 100 pressures last year, a pass rush win rate that just laps the field, honestly. And when people ask us, well, why do you guys think Myles Garrett's the best it's those numbers in front of you right there. The pass rush win rate. I'm pretty sure the pass rush win rate, I don't think anyone's within like 4 or 5 points of that. He's just everything to this defense, honestly. And I know there's a lot of other talented defensive players. This guy makes it go. He's one of the freakiest freaks we have. He first overall pick out of Texas A&M for a reason. Lived up to every bit of that. Shoo-in, first ballot Hall of Famer when he gets there. I don't care if the Browns win a Super Bowl with him or not. He's one of the best defensive players, honestly, we've ever seen. And you just can't pick anybody else for this. And look, there's other really good players. Look, having Zadarius Smith on the other side across from him is big time, because before they got him, they were having challenges finding that second guy. Who's the guy who can get the triple teams off of Myles Garrett? It's Zadarius Smith. You have guys like Maurice Hurst, who's a good player inside. You have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker. You have Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill, who's a pretty good safety pair. You got a bunch of talented players at corner, but it all centers around Myles Garrett. And when you go in, especially into Cleveland, and you're playing them, opposing coaches are going, I don't even know what to do with 95. I don't know. There are certain guys on the field you have no answer for, and Garrett is it. If they were to ever lose him, this defense would completely change. He's the best pass rusher in football. There's arguments for a few other guys, but that's the guy I would vouch for sure.
It's a really good era for the very top of pass rushing in the NFL. There is. It's Myles Garrett, it's TJ Watt, it's Micah Parsons, it's Nick Bosa, it's Max Crosby, right? I mean, like, there are some monster guys, and then you got players like, obviously, like Aiden Hutchinson. We talked about Trey Hendrickson earlier in the show. Like, there's just some really good pass rushers in this league. Myles Garrett, to me, is just he is still number one, and that's that. For that to be the case, and you to even say that out loud, is just a testament to how good he is and how dominant he is, because of how good the other guys are around that. I mean, we're talking future Hall of Famers, I think, with a lot of those names that I mentioned. He had a 27.5 pass rush win percentage last year. The next closest was Micah Parsons at 24.1. So he wasn't even within, what is that, almost 3.5%. It's silly. It's silly how good he is. He obviously is my defensive MVP as well. My breakout player is Jerry Jeudy, the guy that you mentioned. I think that Jerry Jeudy has got to have a big year for this team, right? I mean, I think when you look at their offensive weapons to throw the ball to, they traded for Elijah Moore, who everybody was like, ooh, Elijah Moore. He was disgruntled in New York. They weren't using him the right way. Now Cleveland's going to free him, and he's going to be great. mean, he's been fine, but he hasn't been that type of player. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, I think, could have a major breakout season. He has yet to really ascend to the level in which we talked about Jerry Jeudy, I would say, pre-draft, right? Where when he was a recruit at Alabama, and when he was the routes that this guy was able to run, I mean, how precise he was, the separation that he could create, the vertical ability, it was also fantastic while he was at Alabama. And we haven't seen that similar level of player, at least at a consistent level, in Jeudy. I think that there's a good chance that we could get a breakout year for him. But again, it's got to be a sort of like a 1-2. You can't put the cart before the horse. Deshaun Watson's got to play well in order for Jerry Jeudy to really break out. So maybe if this actually ends up happening, my 10-win prediction for the Browns is actually a little bit too low. But I think that Jerry Jeudy could be in for a pretty big breakout season. I would also like to shout out Cedric Tillman, who I think could also be a nice little breakout candidate for them in the receiver room. But who is your breakout candidate?
I'm going to go on the defensive side, and I think it's a guy who's had a couple of decent seasons already in Cleveland, but hasn't quite broken out. And I think, we mentioned Dax Hill and kind of positional thing before. Sometimes you got to find a fit for a certain guy. I'm looking at Greg Newsome out at corner, and last year it looked like they were kind of flip-flopping him between the outside and the slot, right? And his coverage grades were significantly higher in the slot. I think they need to just make Greg Newsome the slot corner, have Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson on the outside, and then Newsome in on the inside full-time. You see other teams do this now with, say, the Jets, like a Michael Carter, right, where it's just like, that's our slot corner. And look, nickel is the new base, and I think pure slot corners need to start getting drafted higher. We're starting to see it. Guys like Mike Sainristil still in Washington went in the top 50, right? But I think Newsome, I think he would benefit from not jumping back and forth so much, right? Very few guys can do that. I think about Trent McDuffie jumps back and forth, but he's an elite player. I think if they leave Newsome in the slot full time, I think he's going to have a really successful season, and then they can just have Ward and Emerson on the outside and just play with those three in a very similar manner, much like the New York Jets do with Reed and Sauce outside, Carter inside. They can have the same dynamic here in Cleveland with Newsome.
Yeah, and I think it makes the most sense for them just overall, right? I mean, because Emerson's going to be an outside corner for you. Ward's going to be an outside corner for you. You would want Newsome to be that slot, and it's tough to do, but I think that you're right there with him. What about best rookie? Who do you got as the best rookie on this team?
One of the areas, and in part because of health and in part because their run defense, it wasn't as good as their pass rush and their coverage and their pass defense, right? Is linebacker, and I thought this was a team that was going to draft a linebacker at some point, and they did. A guy, Nathaniel Watson from Mississippi State's had a really, really good preseason. Ooh. This is another team that they have a lot of veterans, and there's not a ton of rookies that are going to play a lot. But you've got Jordan Hicks, who's in his 30s, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who had his first healthy season last year after 2 years, being curtailed by injury. They're kind of trying to find some answers at linebacker, and even if it's as an early special teams contributor and then somebody gets hurt or something happens, I think Nathaniel Watson, I believe it was a 6th-round pick at linebacker. I think he's very fundamental. He's not a flashy player at all. He's just going to be in his gap, make his tackles, alignment, assignment, all those things, right? I think about a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair too, who's kind of like that, like not flashy at all, but eventually it's like, you know what, this guy's pretty good. I think Nathaniel Watson could be that guy. He's very fundamentally sound. I think he's going to help their run defense if you have one of those starters in front of him get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who had a ton of tackles when he was at Mississippi State is a centerpiece of that defense over the last couple of years. 113 tackles in 2022, 137 tackles last season, had a lot of tackles for loss as well. So he is somebody who, big-time tackling machine. I'm going to go with another rotational player in Zach Zinter, who I don't know if Zach Zinter is going to need to get on the field this year. He was coming off of injury when he was with Michigan, but he was part of one of the best offensive lines that Michigan had there. They, I think, get a little bit of a steal in him a little bit later in the draft, not having one of those high picks. And I wonder if he is going to be a impactful rookie for them, because as an interior guy, I don't think that Zinter is going to kick out to tackle. I don't think they're going to kick him out to tackle at all. But Joel Bitonio has played tackle before, right? And so, maybe it makes the most sense if Jedrick Will is going to be on the PUP list, depending on Jack Conklin's health as well. Do you plug Zach Zinter in at left guard, and then do you kick Bitonio out the tackle? Is that maybe, you talked at the beginning of the Cleveland Browns section, just sort of where their offensive line is and some question marks for that offensive line. Maybe that ultimately forms their best five, if you will. And so I wonder if we're going to see Zinter at some point this season get one of those guard spots so they could kick one of those great guards in Wyatt Teller or Joel Bitonio, much more likely Joel Bitonio, out to offensive tackle because he has done it even recently, I believe. So I think that that's flexibility that they have there. They're allowed to have that because of Zinter, and I wonder if he's going to be a big-time breakout player for the Cleveland Browns this year. Last team, Pittsburgh Steelers. I had the Steelers for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era going below 500, 6-11. You have them for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era below 500, going 7-10. Both of us obviously having them miss the playoffs here. What do you think about where the Steelers are at? And then give me your offensive MVP for this team. And if it's not one of the quarterbacks, give me your thoughts on the quarterback situation, what you think between Russ and Justin Fields, but then give me your offensive MVP if it's one of those guys.
So similar theme here as I have with the Browns. I have concerns at quarterback and I have concerns on the offensive line. And if I have concerns at those two things, I'm suddenly worried. Now, I think Russell Wilson is going to start. I think he should start, honestly. He didn't have that bad a year last year in Denver. I know there's a lot of friction with Sean Payton, but still talking about a guy who threw 26 touchdowns and just 8 interceptions last year. I know a lot of the big-time throws aren't where they used to be. I know Pittsburgh doesn't have the most stacked receiving core in the league. I believe Roman Wilson's fighting through an injury. That doesn't help them. But I think Wilson is the starter. I know Fields is going to get his chance, but we still need to see further improvement from him as a passer, right? Obviously struggled a lot in Chicago on the passing side and wasn't given the best situation to work with. I'll admit that. But I don't know if this is the best situation to work with either, right? And to me, this offensive line is a real X factor, right? And I'm a little concerned with where it's going already with Troy Fautanu, who was supposed to start at right tackle, suffered an injury. Broderick Jones, who last year went from left tackle to right tackle, now is going back to left tackle. Now with Fautanu's injury, they played the starters the other day against, I believe it was Detroit, and Jones is now back on the right side with Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle. There's just so much shuffling happening on this offensive line right now that I don't know how ready they're going to be. And then they have to protect these two quarterbacks who are known as two of the biggest improvisers in the league. You're talking now about 3.5, 4.5 seconds of having to protect these guys. They already weren't great in pass protection. Now you have to protect for these two who are running around all over the place. But the foundation of this offense is going to be running the ball, right? And they have a really good pair of backs in Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. But my offensive MVP, I actually have Jalen Warren. I think he's just more.
So do I. I have Jalen Warren as well.
He's just like, you just see a different burst with him on the field. He's more efficient. He's a better receiver. I really think it wouldn't shock me by the end of the year. I think at some point this happened in Dallas with Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, where eventually it was just like, man, Tony Pollard's the better back here. And I'm not saying Najee Harris can't do things for him. He had a really good stretch run last season down the stretch when they really made the playoffs playing defense and running the ball. But I think Warren's just more versatile and at times gives him better speed and he's more efficient. I mean, you just talk about a guy, so you look at the rushing yards, well, Najee had a lot more rushing yards. But you look at the total yards, and I believe Warren only had 50 less scrimmage yards on a lot less touches. So I think they need to use Jalen Warren. I think he needs to start becoming the primary back here, and I think Harris certainly has a purpose. You have a 230, 240-pound back like that. He has a purpose. But Warren just fits today's NFL better, doesn't he, right? I just see this as very similar to Dallas when they had Zeke and Tony Pollard, and you just watched more and you go, man, that's the guy who should get the ball more often.
I agree with you. I think going back to the quarterback situation, there's just too much up in the air. I think both of those guys, Fields and Wilson, neither of them finished with a passing grade above 70 last season. When it came to EPA per pass last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers were 23rd. They've got more shuffling along the offensive line, more youth along the offensive line, which is going to take some time to iron out. And, thankfully for them, when you look at Pittsburgh's schedule, it starts pretty easy. They're on the road to face the Falcons in the first game of the year. That's going to be tough with how much better I feel like the Falcons got this offseason. They're then on the road again in Denver, but I think that's a winnable game. They're hosting the Chargers, but Harbaugh is going to play them tough. That. They then go to Indianapolis, and then they get to host the Cowboys. They're facing the Raiders. Then you get into the Jets. Okay, the Jets is a tough one, but I think they're hosting that one. I think they could potentially upset the Jets. They're playing the New York Giants as well. That one's obviously winnable. But then you get into a situation where second half of the season, their bye week is week 9. They got to go to Washington to face the Commanders. Then you face the Ravens. Then you go to Cleveland to face the Browns. To Cincinnati to face the Bengals. Browns again, this time at home. Then it's Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. Like, that is brutal. If you look at from week 11 on for this team, it is Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. That sucks. that is absolutely brutal for this team. And unfortunately, it's the byproduct of being in one of the best divisions in the NFL. And so it's just going to be uphill sledding for them. I just think that this is finally the year that it's a little too much. I don't think that Pittsburgh's going to be terrible. I think they're going to be a team that if you overlook them, if you take them too easily, if you think that this is a for granted win, they'll come back and they'll bite you. And I think that they'll play spoiler a couple of times this season, but I just don't think that it's going to be enough. I do agree with you, though. I think Jaylen Warren is their MVP. I think that he has the potential to be their most efficient player. His 82.4 rushing grade last year was the highest grade category for any player at any position anywhere on this team last season. Jaylen Warren's rushing grade was the best. He was the shining star of this team that was struggling last year, and I just think it's a little bit too much for them this year. Defensive MVP, I do have somebody other than TJ Watt. I have TJ Watt.
I can't do it. And look, and this one was harder because there's some other great players on this. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Patrick Queen coming over is going to be Patrick Queen might honestly be the X factor with as much as Pittsburgh struggled at linebacker last year. That's a huge get for them. Alex Highsmith is really, really good off the other edge, but you can't go away from TJ Watt. I mean, and especially with what the impact is, you just see it when he's hurt and he's out. They don't even function right on defense. He just makes everything happen. There's so much better a team when he's on the field. Not that he's hurt a lot, but you could just see the stark contrast the last two. If he misses a game, they're not even a top half defense. He just makes everything go. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league, and I'll get historical again. I did it with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, our best edge rusher ever in the pass rush game, second overall. TJ Watt is 6th all-time in overall grade in PFF history among edge rushers. Like, he's that good. Another guy just like his brother, future Hall of Famer, Defensive Player of the Year candidate every single year. Pressure machine, can drop into coverage and pick balls off. We've seen him have pick sixes before. Sacks, pressure, run, everything. He's just one of those do everything. You just couldn't pick anybody else here. It's not even. I don't even think it's possible. You could think about a couple. Could I make a Minkah Fitzpatrick case? Sure, another great safety we have in the league, but TJ Watt makes them go. He makes not just the defense, he makes his entire team go.
I agree completely. He is truly one of the best defensive players in football. 19 sacks last year to lead all players. By the way, he's also just 18 sacks away from catching his brother on the all-time sack list. So, hey, just another casual 19-sack season, TJ, and you'll surpass your brother on the all-time sack list, which whenever that happens, if it happens, an incredible accomplishment just because it's an unbelievably talented family who has been a cornerstone of the last decade of NFL defensive line play. What about breakout player? Who do you got breakout player for the Steelers?
I'm going to go in there secondary here, and I think there's an opportunity for a young guy, a second-round pick from last year, to really start emerging, and that's Joey Porter Jr. I think we saw some really, really good moments out of him last year. He can play in press. He can play off. He's got a high football IQ, and he's really physical. I think with Patrick Peterson gone now at corner, I think it opens the door for Porter to have a really nice year. I think we could see some good development from him in year 2, and I think the Steelers could do some versatile things in coverage if Fitzpatrick is healthy, if Porter obviously plays better than he did last. And he had a solid rookie season. If he improves upon that, I think this Pittsburgh secondary could start causing teams issues because they've had problems. No issues rushing the passer, usually a pretty good run defense, especially in Pittsburgh, but they've had issues at corner the last couple of years. I think Joey Porter Jr. could solve those problems.
Would love for him to really take that next step this year and become their CB1 on that team. I'm going to go with another second-year player. I'm going to go with defensive lineman Keanu Benton. I think that Benton is in for a monster season this upcoming year. I was really impressed with him throughout the draft process when I was watching him for the 2024 class. His rise at Wisconsin was a lot of fun to watch. Really started as just a run-stuffing nose tackle, just a zero technique. I'm going to take up multiple blocks. The other guys are going to make some plays in the backfield, and as his career went on with Wisconsin, he became a little bit more of a pass rusher. And that final year that he was there, he started showcasing some pass rush moves, a lot of powerful pass rush moves. We saw that at the Senior Bowl as well. Steelers end up getting him in what was one of my favorite draft classes from that 2024 class. And last year, he had a 74.6 overall grade, which is really nice as a rookie. 464 snaps, that's how he earned those. This preseason, already an 87.3 grade on, just 28 snaps, but he looks good, man. I think he looks poised, getting to play next to Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, those guys. That never hurts, but he is becoming part of that four horsemen of defensive linemen. I think is going to be feared in that division and throughout the NFL, and I think Keanu Benton is becoming a reason why. So I think that he is going to be a breakout player this season. Last one for the Steelers, team's best rookie this year. We got
Yeah, there was a lot of good candidates. I think this was one of the best draft classes in the league. Honestly, when you look at if he's healthy, Troy Fautano should be starting. Roman Wilson, when he's healthy, should give him a vertical threat. Peyton Wilson at linebacker could contribute early because they've had some issues at linebacker and they need someone next to Patrick Queen. But I'm going to center, man. I'm going with Zach Frazier at center. This is
hell yeah, brother.
I watch his play style, and you tell me this. I remember them taking him on draft night. I believe it was in round 2. And I was just like, oh, yeah, that's a Pittsburgh Steeler. Absolutely. Former wrestler, rugged dude at West Virginia, doesn't mind running the ball and playing in cold weather. And you can just see, like, something about him. I was just like, man, when they took him, I was just like, that's a Steeler. That's a Steelers offense. Mason McCormick, too. He won't start at guard, but if anybody were to go down, he could play, too. He's another one. Same thing. Just physical guys, man. And Frazier, I think, steps right in. They've had a lot of issues at the center position in the last couple of years. I think Frazier steps in, has a nice year, and brings that attitude in the run game that they really need to open holes for Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren.
I agree. I got the same guy, and it was a good draft class, I think, for the Steelers, but it's hard not to pinpoint Zach Frazier of somebody who needs to be a centerpiece for them, and we thought that was possible on draft night. Played the most snaps of anybody on that team on the offensive side of the ball in the preseason, 99 snaps, earned an 82.2 pass blocking grade. So a lot of high hopes for Zach Frazier and what he could be for the middle of that young and changing Steelers offensive line. How good he plays could go a long way into solidifying the rest of that offensive line to maybe make up for some of the concerns that you and I talked about as reasons why we think that this team might not be a 500 team this year. Also wanted to shout out Corey Trace Jr., by the way, their cornerback, who I liked Corey Trace a lot when he was coming out of Purdue. He just had a bad injury history, man. Multiple lower body injuries, some serious knee injuries. He had another serious knee injury last year that ruined his rookie year, but 81.3 overall grade and an 80.3 coverage grade this preseason. And so somebody who's got that size, speed combo that you love as an outside corner, big shout out to Corey Trice. I hope he has a fully healthy season this year because I think he is a very talented player. Dalton, you ended the show yesterday with sort of like a hot take. Do you have another hot take for this division? I didn't bring one to the table. But did you have another hot take, or are we saving that one for a different show?
I'm going to try to do one. I'm going to try to do one for every division. This one, I knew the Breece Hall one for the East was a little easier for me. I think, one that pops in my head. I think, let me go to Cincinnati real quick, or I'm in Cincinnati currently. Let me go here real quick. And the Bengals, we both love them. But I think we also have some questions about the running game, right? Zach Moss in there as a primary back, Joe Mixon gone. We're trying to figure out the offensive line still. Let's do this. Let's get Joe Burrow 5,000 yard season.
Ooh, you're cooking. I like it.
I think, you know what? You've got Chase, you've got Higgins, you've got Burton. I like both tight ends that they drafted, right? Eric All and Tanner McLaughlin. I think, as long as he's protected, I'm telling you, I'm calling it the Joe Burrow revenge tour. I think it's coming. Let's go 5,000 yards for Joe Burrow. He proves to us once again that he's an MVP caliber quarterback and puts up stupid numbers this year.
The most yards Joe Burrow has thrown for in his NFL career, 4,611. It was that 2021 season where they went 10-6. The following year, he also threw for over 4,000 yards, but it just wasn't quite as much. Oh, you're cooking, my friend. I like this.
You got anything for me?
I like this trend. These are good. The Breece Hall went in Offensive Player of the Year, and Joe Burrow with a 5,000-yard passing season. That's a really good way to start this trend. So now I'm already excited for the future episodes that we have here. Hopefully you guys are as well. Next, we're going on to the AFC South. We're going to do the same thing, go down the South division, tell you who's going to win, where we think these teams are going to end up when it comes to the playoffs, missing the playoffs, and give you all the great information as to why. Appreciate you guys watching and listening to the show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. This is Dalton Wasserman. We will see you for the next divisional preview. See you guys then.